Hi, my name is Eliza, and I like to consider myself an extrovert. I love hanging out with people. I love talking with people. I love doing fun things. That gives me a lot of energy. Now, some of you may relate to that, and some of you may not, and that's okay. But the odds that you talk to at least one person every single day are pretty high. So that's why communication and conversation are so important. Sherry Turkle, an MIT professor, sociologist, and recent author, was in an interview talking about her recent book, Reclaiming Conversation. And she said, conversation is the most human and humanizing thing that we do. It's where empathy is born and where intimacy is born. And then she goes on to say, we've actually moved away from conversation in a way that my research is showing is hurting us. Now, Sherry has spent the last 20 years researching technology and its effects on our behavior, both in our personal lives and in the lives of people around us. And that's what I want to talk about more today. I want to talk about the effects of mobile devices on our communication skills through the spread of technology, how it affects our communication in school, work, and home settings, and the power of deep and clear communication. So when we talk about how widespread mobile devices are, it's interesting to look at some of the statistics. So the Pew Research Center conducted a study in 2021 that asked US adults how many of them had a cell phone and how many of them had a smartphone. And it's interesting to see the change from 2002, where just over 60% of adults reported that they had a mobile device, to 2021, where 97% of adults reported that they had a cell phone and 85% that they had a smartphone. And it's interesting to see this compared to the global scale as well. When you compare it to the total population, the world has about just over 8 billion people, and 68% of that, a whopping 5.48 billion people, have a mobile device subscription. That means that they can text, call, do things like that, and doesn't necessarily account for all mobile devices, period, throughout the world, but at least the ones that are connected in a communication type of way. And it's interesting to think about that because there are so many people in the world that have mobile devices that this has changed the way that our society functions. It's not like the 60s anywhere more, where some people had radios and things like that, and television was just starting out and still figuring itself out. But we have television on our phone, we have radio on our phone with us all the time. And that's something that affects our communication skills. So when we talk about the importance of communication in work, school, and home life, pay attention to how it feels for you and how you might relate to these situations. So Muhammad Salim and Muhammad Bakhsh, they are from Pakistan, and they conducted a study at the University of Peshawar in 2017 that was trying to figure out, they were trying to observe how texting and mobile communication affected students' writing skills. And what they found was that students who used mobile devices don't focus as well on their studies. And this is because a lot of students will have their phone next to them while they're studying, either on the computer or books or things like that. And they're checking back and forth. They're seeing notifications, they're checking social media, things like that. And so they don't focus as well. And it also badly affects their writing skills. And because of texting, that affects the spelling and grammar mistakes that a lot of students make. So English classes and other language written classes are so important because so many of us are used to just saying BRB instead of be right back, or texting with emojis instead of explaining exactly how we're feeling. And I know I felt that. I use a smiley face as punctuation probably more than I should. And this also leads into the workplace. These university students are graduating. They're headed out into the workforce. And one of the most valued valued skills, period, in the workplace is communication, both verbal and written. And Blake Morgan, in an article that she wrote for Forbes in 2018, talked about three main reasons why a lot of companies are providing communication training. And one, it improves workplace communication. So whether you're at a team meeting or just talking to a coworker, being able to verbally communicate clearly is so effective and so important. The second thing she talks about is that clear written communication is also critical. Whether that's you're writing an email to your boss or your social media manager writing a post for a company, or emailing clients or customers. Being able to communicate what you're trying to say clearly and simply is so important. And it also provides a stronger unified brand. Say you are in charge of a global company like Google. You need to make sure that Google in Bangladesh is the same as Google in California. That brand and that message and the solution that you're trying to communicate and sell is the same. And that is also interesting to see in home life as well, how mobile devices affect both family and parents. And I love the interesting things that happen when that is studied. So there was a study conducted by Valerie Carson and Nicholas Cusick in the University of Alberta in Edmonton. And they studied mothers and their children from ages 0 to 6 and the effects of mobile devices on their lives. So they observed these mothers in different situations. They were at the playground, they were at home, and they were also in the lab. And they just observed them and just let them do their thing. And it's interesting to see the effect of mobile devices on how these parents chose to parent their children. And one specific circumstance, these researchers were studying mothers at the playground. And most mothers, about 60%, were on their mobile device most of the time they were at the playground with their children. They weren't talking to each other, they weren't talking to their kids, and it had a delayed or significant impact on the children themselves. One of the big takeaways was there was a significant number of cell phone interruptions. So when these mothers were glued to their devices and their child was calling for them, these mothers would either have no response the first time or a delayed response. They'd have to suck themselves away from whatever they were doing on their phone to actually talking to their child. It also talked about that's a lower response inhibition. And these children also had a lower emotional self-regulation. They weren't sure how to react to this, and they didn't know what to do. So they had higher externalizing and internalizing rates, which means that these children both became angry and had a lot of high intensity emotions to try to express their feelings, or internalizing. So they wouldn't talk about what they were feeling, what they were concerned about or frustrated with, and because their parents wouldn't listen, or they at least didn't feel like they were listening. They were always stuck to their phones. And these parents may not have thought they were doing anything wrong because they're multitasking, their kids are playing while they can work on work or catch up on texts or do things like that. But it's so important that we focus on connection with people and communication. And that's something that Sherry also brings out in the last part of our interview. She talks about this thing called the 3-person rule, what she calls the 3-person rule, where in any given social situation, at least 3 people have to have their heads up and are engaged in a conversation before someone else decides that they can check out and just check their phone. She says, in this situation where everyone is both paying attention and not paying attention, you end up with nobody talking about what's really on their minds in any serious, significant way. And we end up with trivial conversations, not feeling connected to one another. This is huge. One of my favorite things is having deep conversations that are meaningful. And I notice when I'm actually engaged in those things is usually I'm not checking my phone. I'm not concerned about anything else, and it's active and it's responsive listening. When I'm having conversations with people where I don't really want to pay attention and I'm not really that invested, my phone is usually out and on. I'm checking texts or I'm doing things, I'm doing emails, while I'm having conversation, just checking people about their day. And it's not as effective and it's definitely not as deep. And communication and that connection with people falters. So after we've talked about all these things, it kind of seems like mobile devices are evil, but they're really not. There's a lot of benefits that come with smartphones and mobile technology, like the idea of constant connection, that you can text or call someone across multiple time zones. You couldn't do that before. There's so much information and accessibility. If you want to know something, you don't have to go to your local library anymore. You can check other search engines like Google or Bing, or have research articles at your fingertips. It saves time and efficiency. People can maybe not multitask, but they can do work tasks or home things on the go. And you also have the opportunity for social networking. You can stay connected to people that are 3 states away from you. Maybe they're across the world, and you can have that connection if someone has a mobile device. But the most important thing to know is that it is the tool, and the way that we use it affects the way that we communicate with people and the way that it impacts our lives. So I have a challenge for you to put down your phone. And that may mean different things for different people. Maybe that means turning off your notifications while you're at home so you're more engaged in the conversations that you have there. Maybe you leave your phone before you come to the dinner table. Maybe it's just turning it on silent so you're engaged and focused at school. But whatever that is for you, put down your phone and connect with people around you. Thank you.